You know, um, when you go to buy a coffee at a cafe, you don't typically, well, you don't ask the barista to let you inspect the building's plumbing before you hand over your credit card.
Right. Yeah. No one does that.
No. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't demand to see the electrical schematics, and you definitely don't ask for some sworn affidavit that the refrigerator is keeping the milk at exactly 38 degrees.
You'd get kicked out of the cafe if you tried on.
Exactly. You just, you trust that the health inspector did their job.
Yeah.
It's this totally invisible layer of trust that makes normal commerce possible for you and me.
It's a completely implicit agreement, and honestly, it's the only reason you can get a coffee in 2 minutes instead of 2 weeks.
Right.
Because the system just handles the background checks automatically, so the transaction can happen instantly.
But then you step into the world of B2B enterprise software, right?
Mhm.
Where millions of dollars and massive amounts of sensitive corporate data are on the line. And suddenly, there is no universal health inspector.
None at all.
You have to literally check the plumbing yourself every single time you want to do business with a new vendor. And this missing health inspector is, I mean, it's the absolute definition of a commercial bottleneck.
Oh, it's paralyzing.
Yeah. And today, we are taking a look at a massive stack of documents detailing how one specific startup is trying to hack that exact bottleneck.
Which is an incredibly ambitious goal.
It really is. I mean, the mission of today's deep dive is to figure out how does a single company combine artificial intelligence, a highly specialized work source located deep in the Himalayas, of all places, and this radical new theory of corporate marketing to chase $1 billion valuation.
It's a fascinating triad, really, because usually, you see startups lean entirely into AI,
Right.
or they lean entirely into offshoring, or they just run the standard Silicon Valley playbook. Seeing all three braided together into a single cohesive strategy, that's incredibly rare,
Yeah,
and it directly challenges how we normally think about scaling a modern tech company.
absolutely. So I was reading through this incredibly thorough profile from a blog called Democracy for Nepal. It's dated April 28th, 2026. And the subject is a cybersecurity startup called SecurityPal AI.
Mm-hmm.
The stack includes a breakdown of their platform, the really visionary backstory of its founder, Pukar Hamal, an aggressive 5-year business plan targeting unicorn status, and this really provocative essay by Paramendra Kumar Bhagat on hypergrowth marketing.
There's a lot to unpack there.
So much.
Yeah.
And I mean, okay, let's unpack this. Whether you are an entrepreneur trying to scale your own business or, a tech enthusiast watching the AI landscape evolve, or just someone fascinated by how global businesses are being built right now, this deep dive offers a total masterclass.
You really do.
It's a masterclass in scaling trust, rethinking where elite talent actually lives, and fundamentally changing how we view corporate marketing.
And to really grasp what they're doing, we can't just look at what they built, but why their hybrid model completely bucks the conventional wisdom.
Exactly. So let's start right at the pain point, because I think a lot of people need to understand this. We hear the term third-party risk management, or TPRM, thrown around a lot in B2B circles.
Yeah, constantly.
But what does that actually look like on the ground? How painful is this problem?
Well, to understand the sheer agony of TPRM, you really have to put yourself in the shoes of a fast-growing software company.
Okay.
Let's say you've spent, 9 months wooing a massive Fortune 500 bank.
Oh, man. The big fish.
Right. You've done the demos, you've convinced the executives, and the sales team is literally popping champagne because this deal is going to make your entire quarter.
Or your year.
Exactly. But before the ink can dry on the contract, the bank's procurement and security teams step in. And they say, we love the product, but before we hand over our customer data, you need to fill out the spreadsheet.
Right. And I've seen these spreadsheets. We aren't talking about a quick 10-question Survey Monkey link here.
Not even close. It's often an Excel file with 1,000 rows, sometimes way more.
1,000 rows just of questions.
Oh, yeah. They want to know the absolute granular details of your encryption standards. Like, do you use AES 256? How are your encryption keys managed? What is your employee offboarding process if someone gets fired on a Tuesday?
Cool.
Do you conduct annual penetration testing, and can we see the raw results of that? What are your physical data center security protocols? And the worst part,
Let me guess. None of it is standardized.
you got it. Every major enterprise has its own bespoke, highly convoluted questionnaire.
So what happens to the momentum of that champagne-popping deal?
It crashes into a brick wall. immediately. A salesperson cannot answer those questions.
Right. They don't know the encryption protocols.
Exactly. So they have to go to their top engineers, the people who should be, actually building new features and say, hey, I need you to stop coding and spend the next 2 weeks digging through our AWS architecture to answer this spreadsheet.
That sounds like a nightmare for an engineer.
It is. So deals just stall for weeks, sometimes months. And in enterprise sales, time kills all deals.
Yeah, budgets shift.
Exactly. Budgets shift. The internal champion who loved your product leaves the company, and the deal just slowly dies in procurement purgatory.
Okay, so that context makes SecurityPal's entrance onto the scene make a whole lot more sense. Because they were founded in 2020 and emerged from stealth mode in September of 2022. And they came out swinging with a $21 million Series A round.
Which is a massive Series A for this specific niche.
Right. And I'm looking at the investors, and you don't get that kind of money from this specific group just for building, like, a better skull checker.
No, definitely not.
It was led by Kraft Ventures, and it featured major players like Martin Casado from Andreessen Horowitz, Frederick Karist, who's the co-founder of Okta, and Anne Raimondi, the COO of Asana.
That is a heavyweight list.
It really is. And at the time of this Series A, they already had a post-money valuation of $105 million.
And that investor list, it's really the ultimate validation of the pain point we just talked about.
Because they've lived it.
Exactly. Okta and Asana are foundational enterprise tools. Frederick Karist and Anne Raimondi have intimately lived the friction of enterprise sales. They know exactly what it's like to have a multi-million-dollar contract stuck in purgatory because of a security review.
So they see the value instantly.
Right. When operators of that caliber put millions into a seed stage or Series A solution, it's because they recognize it as a universal hair-on-fire problem across all of Silicon Valley.
So let's look at the actual architecture of what they built to justify that, $100 million valuation. They call it the Assurance Management Platform, or AMP. And the core claim here is that they speed up this agonizing security review process by up to 100 times. They're condensing a multi-week process down to as little as 12 hours.
12 hours is almost unbelievable in this space.
Right. But how are they actually doing that? Because we have all these features listed in the documents, the security questionnaire concierge, the trust center, an AI-enriched knowledge library, and AI copilot. Like, how do these pieces actually fit together to parse a messy custom Excel spreadsheet from some Fortune 500 bank?
So it operates almost like a highly intelligent assembly line.
Okay.
When that 1,000-row custom spreadsheet comes in, it hits the security questionnaire concierge first. Instead of a human opening it and just sighing in despair, the AI ingests the document.
Makes sense.
It maps the convoluted formatting, whether it's an Excel sheet, a messy Word doc, or even one of those clunky web portals, and translates all those questions into a standardized format.
Okay, so it normalizes the data.
Exactly.
Oh.
Then it queries the AI-enriched knowledge library.
Now, I want to pause on the knowledge library for a second, because version control seems super critical here.
Oh, it's everything.
Right, because if a company updates its password policy, say in 2025, you absolutely cannot have the system auto-filling a new questionnaire with the 2023 policy. That's how you fail an audit.
Precisely. And that's why the knowledge library isn't just some dumb, static repository of past answers. It's a version-controlled, dynamically updated source of truth.
Okay.
So the AI copilot looks at the new question from the bank, searches the knowledge library for how the company has answered similar questions in the past, verifies that the policy is currently active, and drafts a highly technical response.
All automatically.
All automatically. It does this for all 1,000 questions in a matter of minutes.
That's incredible.
And then they also have the Trust Center, which I find really interesting because it flips the process from reactive to proactive.
How so?
It allows companies to create these beautiful interactive profiles to showcase their security posture up front. So you send a link to the bank before they even ask, potentially bypassing the questionnaire entirely.
Oh, that's smart. Just like, here's our health inspector certificate. Don't even bother giving us the spreadsheet.
Exactly.
And the client list utilizing this assembly line is staggering, by the way. Figma, OpenAI, Grammarly, Elastic, MongoDB, Airtable.
Yeah, those are the companies defining the modern tech stack.
Right. The fact that OpenAI is using SecurityPal to handle their compliance is a massive signal. But here is the piece that really caught my attention in the reading. If you look at the broader tech landscape right now, the knee-jerk reaction to any problem involving massive amounts of text is just to throw a large language model at it and call it a day, right?
Oh, completely. Pure automation.
Yeah, pure automation.
Uh-huh.
But SecurityPal explicitly rejects the pure AI play. They say no to that.
They do, and what's fascinating here is that this is actually their most significant differentiator.
Really. Not using AI completely is the differentiator.
Exactly. Because the narrative in Silicon Valley right now is that AI will replace the entire workflow, let the bots do everything. But in governance, risk, and compliance GRC, pure AI has a fatal flaw.
Hallucinate?
It hallucinates. Large language models are ultimately just really advanced predictive text engines, right?
Yeah.
They are trying to guess the next most logical word.
Right.
They aren't querying a database of absolute infallible truth unless they're highly, highly constrained. And even then, they make mistakes.
And a mistake in this context isn't just like a funny typo in a marketing email.
Oh no, it's a total catastrophe. Let's say an AI hallucination tells a bank that your software encrypts data using a specific protocol, a really secure one that you don't actually use,
Okay.
and then the bank gets breached. You have just opened your company up to massive legal liability. You've essentially committed breach of contract.
Wow. Because you lied on the intake form.
Exactly. Even if the AI lied on your behalf, you are responsible. A hallucination in GRC ruins reputations and instantly kills enterprise trust.
I was trying to think of an analogy for this, and it sounds like B2B enterprise sales is basically a high-stakes dating scene.
Okay, I like where this is going.
You wooed the prospect, you have a great time, you're ready to commit. But then they demand this incredibly rigorous background check before making it official.
The spreadsheet.
The spreadsheet. And pure AI in this scenario is like asking a robot to vouch for your character. It might speak lightning fast, but nobody actually trusts the robot yet because the robot has no skin in the game.
It can't go to jail.
Exactly. You need a human lawyer, a certified expert, to look at the robot's work, sign off on it, and put their actual professional reputation on the line saying, yes, this is legally and technically accurate.
That is exactly the dynamic. The AI drafts the responses at scale, but the human expert is the ultimate gatekeeper. SecurityPal can guarantee regulatory-grade outcomes only because a human takes accountability for that final output.
The machine provides the scale, and the human provides the trust.
Perfectly said.
But I'm struggling to reconcile the math on that, to be honest.
The unit economics.
Yeah, because the entire allure of software as a service, the reason these companies get massive valuations, is infinite scalability. Once you write the code, serving 1,000 customers costs roughly the same as serving 10.
In theory, yes.
Right. But if SecurityPal requires a highly trained human to sit there and review every single questionnaire for every single client, how does that scale? If you are inherently bottlenecked by human labor, how do you build a massively profitable tech company?
That tension between the infinite scale of software and the inherent friction and cost of human expertise, that is the central problem of their business model.
Right.
And solving it requires us to look at where this human accountability is actually coming from, because you can't just hire 100 GRC analysts in San Francisco.
Oh, the salaries would be astronomical.
Exactly. The labor costs would either bankrupt the company or force you to price the product so high that no one would ever buy it.
Which perfectly explains the operational masterpiece built by their founder, Pukar Hamal. To understand how they solve the human bottleneck, you really have to look at his trajectory, because it is remarkably non-traditional for a Silicon Valley CEO.
It is, while simultaneously hitting all the highest possible markers of intellectual achievement along the way.
Totally. So he was born in 1991 in Nepal, with roots in a rural area called Darchula. The profile mentions he initially grew up without consistent plumbing or electricity.
Quite a starting point.
Right. Then he immigrates to Queens, New York, and from there makes this immense leap to Stanford University. But even before Stanford, he was just an absolute prodigy in science.
The awards are wild.
In 2008, he took second place at the Intel International Science and Engineering Fair. In 2009, he was a finalist in the Intel Science Talent Search. And this is my favorite detail in the entire stack of documents.
I think I know what you're going to say.
Because of those science achievements, MIT's Lincoln Laboratory literally named a minor planet after him.
It's incredible. He has a planet. It establishes this baseline of exceptional raw intellect.
Yeah.
But what makes Hamal fascinating isn't just that he's smart. It's that his career path after Stanford is incredibly eclectic. He doesn't just join a FAANG company as a junior software developer like everyone else.
No, he goes to work as a regulatory affairs and public policy analyst at PwC.
Which is very corporate, very compliance heavy.
Exactly. Then he serves as the official liaison to the economy of Taiwan on behalf of the U.S. Department of State.
International diplomacy.
Then he becomes a seed investor and a serial entrepreneur. He even lived the exact pain point he's solving right now. The inspiration for SecurityPal apparently came when a previous company he co-founded was going through an acquisition, and the whole deal was nearly derailed by a brutal security questionnaire.
Look at the synthesis of skills there, though. It's so unique. He understands regulatory frameworks from his time at PwC. He understands high-stakes diplomacy from the State Department. He understands venture capital from being an investor.
He speaks multiple languages, too.
Right, native Nepali and English, plus Hindi and French. He is just uniquely positioned to bridge completely different worlds. And that brings us to how he actually solved the scalability problem of human oversight.
The Security Assurance Command Center, or SACC,
Yes.
this is the engine of the entire operation. The human element, reviewing the AI's work, it isn't just a rotating cast of gig workers on Fiverr.
No, definitely not.
Hamal built a proprietary, highly structured facility in Kathmandu, Nepal, and it is staffed by over 150 full-time, in-house, certified security analysts and GRC professionals, operating 24 hours a day.
And the distinction of them being full-time in-house employees is absolutely critical to the model.
Because they aren't contractors.
Exactly. Hamal has coined the term Silicon Peaks for the ecosystem he is building in Kathmandu.
Yeah.
He isn't just looking for cheap outsourced labor. His stated goal is to turn Kathmandu into a major Asian tech hub.
Wow.
He wants to contribute massively to Nepal's tech GDP and offer high-wage, full-time roles that build a lasting tech ecosystem in a region that the global tech industry has historically just ignored.
I mean, that sounds like a beautiful philanthropic mission. It really does. But I have to look at this from a pure business perspective for a second.
Sure.
Is this Silicon Peaks narrative just a really smart PR story? Or is it a genuine, replicable strategic advantage for a global startup?
Oh, it is the ultimate structural advantage. It is a masterclass in talent arbitrage.
Really? How so?
Think about the core promise of the product. Assurance. They promise regulatory-grade accuracy for companies like OpenAI and Figma. You absolutely cannot deliver that level of nuance with gig workers who jump from project to project and have zero loyalty to your company.
Because they don't care about the long-term relationship.
Exactly. You need high retention. You need an analyst who has been with SecurityPal for 2 years and intimately understands the specific weird quirks of how Figma handles its data encryption.
Ah, I see. You need institutional memory.
Yes. Institutional memory is everything in GRC. By building the SACC in Kathmandu, SecurityPal accesses a pool of highly educated, multilingual talent. And because the cost of living in Nepal is significantly different from the Bay Area, SecurityPal can offer salaries that are highly competitive locally.
Creating great jobs.
Right, creating fantastic careers that foster intense loyalty and high retention, while simultaneously maintaining incredible cost efficiency for the company's bottom line. The SACC is exactly what allows the hybrid AI-human model to scale profitably.
Okay. That clicks for me now.
Okay.
And this ties directly into a philosophy the documents say Hamal operates under, which he calls nuanced capital. Because in the standard Silicon Valley playbook, the goal is basically raise an astronomical amount of venture capital, burn through it to acquire customers at a massive loss, and just figure out the unit economics later.
Blitz scaling.
Right. But Hamal advocates for sustainable, profit-focused growth. He explicitly talks about making a 30 to 40-plus year commitment to his company.
Which is practically unheard of in venture-backed software. I mean, the typical timeline is to build, hyperscale, and exit via acquisition or IPO within 5 to 7 years, tops.
Right. Everybody wants a quick exit.
Hamal's nuanced capital is a total rejection of the VC treadmill. He is building an institution. And the profitability generated by that Kathmandu operational hub, that is the financial bedrock that allows him to make long-term decisions rather than just chasing the next funding round to keep the lights on.
Okay, so let's take a step back. We have a beautifully designed closed-loop system here.
We do.
We have a product that solves a massive, undeniable pain point. We have defensible moat combining AI speed with human accuracy. We have an elite, cost-efficient workforce in Nepal providing that accuracy. And we have a founder who thinks in decades, not quarters.
It's the perfect foundation.
The foundational pieces are perfect. But and this is a big... But having a great foundation doesn't automatically equal hypergrowth.
No, it doesn't.
You have to take this highly efficient machine and actually force it into the market. How do they sell it? How do they scale?
And that is exactly where the source material introduces a deeply aggressive and honestly quite radical theory of marketing.
Yes, the essay.
Right, articulated in an essay by Paramendra Kumar Vagat.
The essay is titled The Trick to Hypergrowth. treat marketing like electricity and compute.
Yeah.
And Pagat starts with this very blunt diagnosis of why most startup founders fail at scaling.
It's a great diagnosis.
He argues that founders treat marketing as a creative side project, like a hobby that the CEO dabbles in, or just something the sales team does in their spare time when they aren't on calls.
And the metaphor he uses for this is brilliant.
What was it?
He says an ambitious startup trying to generate its own marketing in-house is like a homeowner trying to generate their own electricity by slapping a few solar panels on the roof and running a loud diesel generator in the garage.
That is such a perfect image. Just a loud, smoky generator chugging away.
Right. I mean, it's scrappy, and maybe it works to keep a few lights on in the beginning, but it's not going to power a massive factory.
Exactly. Fagat's thesis is that to achieve true hypergrowth, marketing must be treated exactly like cloud computing infrastructure. Think about Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud. If you are a modern tech company today, you do not build your own server farm in a broom closet.
You'd be crazy to try.
You plug into the grid, you consume world-class infrastructure as a service, and you expect reliable, on-demand power. Fagat argues that marketing, which is the engine that drives pipeline, customer acquisition, and ultimately valuation, should be consumed as a utility in the exact same way.
And look, he does acknowledge that the scrappy DIY mindset works at the very beginning.
0 to 1.
Right. When you are going from 0 to maybe 2 million in annual recurring revenue, the founder is the marketing team. They're writing the blog posts, recording the demos, DMing people on LinkedIn. You have to do it yourself because you literally have no budget.
Makes sense.
But he identifies a fatal breaking point. The moment a company tries to scale from 2 million to 10, 30, or 100 million in ARR, that DIY mindset completely shatters.
Because you just can't do it all.
Founders fall into this trap of thinking, nobody understands the product like I do, so they try to oversee marketing part-time. And the result? Inconsistent content, amateur design, disjointed campaigns, and ultimately, a stalled pipeline.
You are trying to run an enterprise on a diesel generator while your competitors are plugged into a nuclear power plant.
Exactly.
So Pagat provides a very specific 3-part blueprint for how a hypergrowth company should actually structure its marketing.
Let's hear it.
Step 1. Consume world-class marketing as a service. You hire the absolute best external partners and agencies for all the execution-heavy work. Demand generation, SEO, paid media buying, PR, creative production. You do not build a massive internal team to do these things.
Right. You outsource the mechanics.
Step 2 is where the magic really happens, I think. You maintain a microscopic but highly elite internal strategy layer.
Very small team.
We are talking 3 to 6 world-class marketers. But crucially, their job is not to execute. They aren't in there writing the ad copy. Their job is orchestration, positioning, and messaging. They are the engineers in the control room, turn the dials on the utility grid to ensure the power flows to the exact right places.
I love that. And step 3 is how you measure it.
Right.
You measure the marketing utility strictly by outcomes, just like you measure computing power by dollars per FLOP. You measure marketing by pipeline generated, customer acquisition cost payback, and revenue influenced.
You don't measure it by how many blog posts the team turned out this week.
Exactly. Vanity metrics are dead in this model. But we really need to ask, why is this specific model so absolutely critical for SecurityPal?
Well, it's because of the space they operate in. Cybersecurity, compliance, GRC. The buyers aren't teenagers on TikTok. They are chief information security officers, chief risk officers.
Deeply sophisticated, inherently skeptical buyers.
Exactly. Trust is the only currency that matters to them. Pagat points out that in these complex enterprise spaces, your marketing cannot look like it was cobbled together by a smart founder on a Sunday afternoon.
It has to be flawless.
It must project absolute reliability, flawless presentation, and professional scale. Because if you are selling a product that promises regulatory-grade accuracy to a Fortune 500 bank, your brand presentation has to be bulletproof.
Subconsciously, the buyer is judging everything.
Right. If your website has broken links or your ads look amateurish, the buyer will subconsciously assume your core product is equally amateurish.
It's a huge risk.
But I'd actually like to push back on the reality of implementing this grid for a second.
Okay, let's play devil's advocate.
Put yourself in Pukar Hamal's shoes. You've poured your life into building Silicon Peaks. You have this rich, personal backstory. Giving up control of your brand's voice to an external ad agency sounds terrifying.
It does.
If every ambitious startup just plugs into the exact same top-tier agencies using the exact same playbooks, Doesn't the marketing just become incredibly polished, but ultimately generic corporate speak? Like, how do you stay unique if you're using the same utility as everyone else?
That is the primary risk of the utility model, for sure. But the defense against it lies entirely in that second step, the internal strategy layer.
The 3 to 6 people.
Right. The uniqueness of the company shouldn't come from who configures the Google Ads account or who manually formats the HTML for the email newsletter. The uniqueness comes from the founder's vision and that internal orchestration team.
Okay, so think of it like a master composer writing a symphony.
That's a great way to look at it. The composer, the founder, has the totally unique emotional vision for the music. The internal strategy team arranges the sheet music and decides the tempo.
But they don't play the instruments.
Exactly. They don't try to play the violin, the cello, and the timpani themselves. They hire the best symphony orchestra in the world, the external agencies, to execute the vision flawlessly. By completely offloading the mechanical grunt work, the founder is freed up to be the chief storyteller. Hamal can spend his time articulating the grand vision of Silicon Peaks in interviews and keynotes, rather than worrying about SEO keyword density.
That distinction makes a lot of sense. You outsource the mechanics, but you fiercely protect the narrative.
Exactly.
And looking at the final part of our source material, we see exactly what happens when SecurityPal plugs into this grid at full voltage.
The 5-year plan.
Yeah. They lay out a highly detailed, aggressively phased 5-year blueprint to reach a $1 billion plus valuation unicorn status by 2030 or 2031.
It is a phenomenal translation of Bhagat's theory into tactical quarter-by-quarter execution.
To set the baseline here, the text estimates their current state in early 2026 to be somewhere between $20 and $40 million in ARR. And that's growing rapidly from $10 million the year prior.
So they already have massive momentum.
Their goal is to hit $80 to $100 million plus in ARR within 5 years. That's a 3 to 4x compound annual growth rate.
And in the SaaS world, especially when you are intersecting AI and cybersecurity, reaching 100 million in ARR can absolutely justify a 10 to 15 times revenue multiple.
Which gets you to that billion-dollar valuation.
Exactly. And the market tailwinds are massive. The TPRM market alone is projected to grow to over $18 billion by 2030.
$18 billion. So the demand is expanding. The product is solid. Let's break down the phases of how they actually plan to capture it. Phase 1 is called Ignition and Momentum, covering 2026 to 2027.
The primary objective here is to definitively prove that their hybrid AI model is superior to pure automation while building massive pipeline velocity. They aim to double ARR and raise a Series B at a $300 to $500 million valuation. And just look at the tactics they're using to get there. Massive content and SEO domination.
Right. They plan to publish an annual benchmark report based on the 2 million questions they've already processed.
Which is brilliant. That isn't just marketing. That is establishing themselves as the definitive data-driven authority in the space.
And their paid acquisition strategy is heavy. They're talking about a $2 to $5 million per year ramp on LinkedIn and YouTube ads, targeting highly specific personas.
Firing up the grid.
Literally. But they're also leaning heavily into product-led growth, or PLG. They plan to offer a free tier of their Trust Center, or even offer to answer a prospect's first 5 security questionnaires entirely for free. They just want to get the user hooked on the speak.
And PLG in enterprise security is notoriously difficult to pull off.
Why is that?
Because security tools are usually top-down sales. But if you can lower the barrier to entry so an individual engineer can experience the absolute magic of having a 100-row spreadsheet answered in hours instead of days.
The engineer becomes your champion.
Exactly. The product sells itself up the chain of command. Hey, boss, this tool just saved me a week of work. We need to buy it.
But the piece of phase 1 that blew my mind the most was the referral program.
Oh, the bounties.
Yes. They are planning to offer $10,000 to $50,000 credits or even cash bounties for closed-won referrals. If an existing client refers a massive new enterprise account to SecurityPal, they will cut them a massive check.
That tells me one very specific thing. They have extreme confidence in their lifetime value, or LTV, of a customer.
Right, because otherwise you can't afford a 50-grand bounty.
Exactly. They know that once a company integrates SecurityPal into their sales cycle, they never leave. The churn must be incredibly low, which justifies a massive customer acquisition cost upfront.
It basically weaponizes their existing customer base into a highly motivated external sales force.
It really does. Now, moving to phase 2, covering 2027 to 2028, category leadership and scale. The goal here is to push past 50 million in ARR.
This is where they stop selling a tool and they start selling a movement. They want to own an entirely new category called customer assurance. They are planning a massive brand campaign called the assurance economy. We're talking billboards in San Francisco and New York, high-end video series, even floating the idea of Super Bowl-style targeted ads.
And this is the critical pivot in hypergrowth. The message changes from, we help you fill out forms faster, to security compliance is a revenue multiplier.
Oh, I like that phrasing.
Right. They are repositioning the entire concept of the security review. Think about it. If you can clear compliance in 12 hours, and your competitor takes 3 weeks to answer the same spreadsheet, you win the deal.
You get the signature first.
Yes. Trust becomes a competitive weapon. It's a pre-sales growth lever, not a post-sales bottleneck.
In this phase, they also expand aggressively into adjacent markets. Virtual CISO services, audit readiness, privacy compliance like GDPR and CCPA.
Broadening the platform.
Exactly. And they use the Kathmandu Command Center as the credibility anchor to push into European and Asia-Pacific markets, proving they can handle global complexity.
Which perfectly sets up Phase 3, hyperscale and defensibility, covering 2029 to 2030, the endgame for the billion-dollar valuation.
The tactics here shift toward true market dominance and preparing for an IPO or a major exit. They plan to use mergers and acquisitions, literally buying up smaller, niche AI startups to instantly acquire specialized features and new customer bases.
Consolidation.
Right. They want to run global campaigns to make SecurityPal the absolute default standard. The documents literally use the analogy of becoming the Zoom for video. They want the brand name to become the verb for compliance.
And they are targeting the Fortune 500 heavily with multi-year contracts and usage-based scaling, because the more AI agents a massive corporation uses across its global footprint, the higher the annual contract value goes.
Yeah, wait, I need to jump in here.
Okay.
Because I'm looking at this 5-year plan with the billboards and the acquisitions, and I'm struggling to reconcile it with what we discussed earlier.
The nuanced capital.
Yes. We spent all this time analyzing Hamal's obsession with nuanced capital, sustainable builds, and rejecting the VC treadmill. But this blueprint calls for dumping 35 to 50% of revenue into sales and marketing.
It's a huge percentage.
It calls for raising massive Series B and C rounds at huge step-up valuations just to fuel aggressive ad spend. Isn't he just playing the exact blitzscaling game he claimed to be avoiding? You can't be nuanced while burning tens of millions on billboards in San Francisco. Is nuanced capital going out the window the second they chase the unicorn title?
It looks totally contradictory on the surface, I agree, but the financial mechanics actually align perfectly if you factor in the Kathmandu operation.
How so?
The document specifically notes that this massive marketing spend is funded by profitability plus next round capital.
Wait, how are they profitable while spending 50% of revenue on marketing? That math doesn't work.
Because of the SACC. The Silicon Peaks Command Center provides such an overwhelming advantage in labor cost efficiency compared to a San Francisco-based team that SecurityPal's gross margins are likely astronomically high.
Oh.
That underlying operational profitability acts as a financial shock absorber. It generates massive amounts of cash. They take that cash, combine it with strategic venture capital, and pour it into Pukar utility grid.
Ah, okay, so nuanced capital doesn't mean grow slowly and organically like a mom-and-pop shop.
Not at all.
It means grow sustainably on a foundation of actual positive unit economics.
Because they built a genuinely profitable operational engine in Nepal, they have earned the right to step on the gas pedal with their marketing.
Exactly. They aren't relying solely on investor subsidies just to survive month to month. They control their own destiny.
Wow. They can be intensely aggressive in acquiring customers without creating that fragile, burn-heavy balance sheet that destroys so many startups when the macroeconomic climate turns cold.
You nailed it. It's aggressive growth, but it's structurally sound. This has been a truly phenomenal stack of documents to unpack. I mean, we've explored a startup that is solving the ultimate enterprise migraine security questionnaires by refusing to fall into the trap of pure hallucinating AI or purely unscalable human labor.
They engineered a highly defensible hybrid moat, machine speed parsing and drafting, backed by fully accountable human expertise.
And to make that human expertise scale, they didn't just outsource to faceless gig platforms. They built a bridge from Silicon Valley to Kathmandu, creating an elite 247 workforce that provides incredible gross margins.
Margins which are then utilized to plug into an infrastructural view of marketing, treating it like electricity and compute to aggressively hunt a $1 billion valuation.
So what does this all mean for you? Whether you are trying to figure out how to scale a business, navigating an overloaded technical workflow, or just observing how global talent pools are shifting in the age of AI, the core lesson here is profound.
It really is.
It's about knowing precisely what to automate, what absolutely requires a human touch, and what parts of your business you should simply plug into the grid so you can focus on your unique value.
But here is where my head goes when I think about the long-term implications of this.
What's that?
Hagat makes a highly compelling case that once scale matters, you should never generate your own marketing. You just plug into the grid and hire the best agencies.
Right?
But think about the logical endpoint of that theory. If every ambitious company, including SecurityPal's direct competitors, reads this blueprint, and they all start buying the exact same world-class electricity from the exact same top-tier demand gen agencies, SEO firms, and AI content vendors, doesn't the grid itself become entirely commoditized?
Oh, wow. If everyone has a world-class symphony orchestra, the music all starts to sound perfectly orchestrated, but entirely the same.
Precisely. If flawless execution becomes a universally accessible commodity, then it is no longer a competitive advantage. It's merely the baseline requirement to exist in the market.
That makes sense.
And if the marketing utility becomes totally commoditized, doesn't the only true, uncopyable differentiator left become the very thing Pukar Hamal built first?
A human story.
The deeply authentic origin narrative. A kid from rural Nepal who went to Stanford, learned international diplomacy, and is now trying to build Silicon Peaks to elevate his homeland's economy.
Yeah.
No external utility company, and certainly no large language model, can ever generate that. In a world of perfect automated marketing, radical human authenticity might be the only defensible moat left.
That is an incredible thought to end on. Because at the end of the day, whether you are trying to buy a cup of coffee or sign a $10 million software contract, you aren't really trusting the plumbing, and you aren't trusting the AI. You're trusting the human being who stands behind it and guarantees the work. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it gave you something to ponder about the fine line between automation and authenticity in your own world. Until next time.